The notebook slipped from trembling hands as Jim Carrey stopped mid-sentence and stared into the audience. Ellen had been discussing comedy and depression with the legendary actor when she noticed the young man in row 3 scribbling frantically, tears streaming down his face. What happened next proved that sometimes the most important performance isn't the one that gets applause, but the one that saves a life. The Ellen DeGeneres Show studio hummed with contemplative energy this Wednesday afternoon in Burbank. 400 audience members filled the iconic blue-lit space, their anticipation electric as they prepared to witness one of comedy's most fearless truth-tellers discuss his craft and his struggles. Jim Carrey, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that couldn't quite contain his kinetic presence, sat in the guest chair with characteristic intensity, his famous animated features taking on that thoughtful quality that revealed the philosopher beneath the funny man. Ellen, radiant in a forest green blazer with subtle bronze threading that caught the studio lights perfectly, leaned forward with genuine fascination as America's rubber-faced icon prepared to reveal the man behind the mask. The conversation had started light, with Jim doing impressions that had the audience rolling, but gradually shifted into deeper territory as Ellen's natural gift for drawing out vulnerability took hold. This was the Ellen DeGeneres that millions had come to trust, the woman who could make celebrities feel safe enough to share their most guarded truths. Jim, you've been so incredibly honest about your battles with depression, about how comedy can be both a gift and a curse, Ellen said, her voice carrying that perfect blend of warmth and journalistic curiosity that had made her America's favorite daytime host. What do you want people to understand about comedians and mental health? Jim's expression grew serious, his body language shifting from the manic energy that had made him famous to something more grounded, more real. Ellen, I think people need to understand that comedy is often born from pain. We make people laugh because we know what it feels like to cry alone in the dark. The stage becomes our therapy session, except we're simultaneously the therapist and the patient, and the audience gets to witness our healing process disguised as entertainment. The studio was captivated by this vulnerable side of the man who had brought them Ace Ventura, The Mask, and countless moments of pure joy. His honesty was raw and unfiltered, the kind of authenticity that could only come from someone who had stared into the abyss and lived to tell about it. But Ellen, with her finely tuned instincts for reading a room developed over decades of connecting with people in crisis, noticed something else entirely. In the third row, slightly left of center, a young man was writing in a small leather notebook with an intensity that didn't match the casual atmosphere of the show. His pen moved frantically across the pages, stopping only when he looked up to wipe his eyes with the back of his hand. And Ellen could see that behind his forced smile was something much deeper, much more desperate. 22-year-old Danny Martinez had driven 6 hours from Phoenix to be in this audience, spending his last $200 on gas, a motel room that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams, and the ticket that had taken him 3 months to save for while working nights at a 24-hour diner. His notebook, leather cover worn smooth from constant handling, contained hundreds of jokes he'd written in the 2 years since his father Miguel's death in a head-on collision with a drunk driver. Each carefully crafted punchline was a small attempt to find meaning in the meaningless, humor in the horrible, hope in the hopeless void that had swallowed his world whole. Danny's father had been a maintenance worker at a comedy club in Phoenix, and every night after his shift, he would come home with stories about the comedians he'd watched from the back of the room while cleaning tables. Miguel Martinez had never finished high school, but he understood timing, he understood pain, and he understood that his son had something special. When Danny was 16 and too scared to perform at his school's talent show, Miguel had sat with him in their small kitchen and said, "Mijo, God gave you a gift. He made you funny because the world needs people who can make others smile when they're crying. That's not just entertainment, that's ministry. You know, Jim, Ellen continued, but her maternal instincts were now fully activated. Her attention split between her famous guest and the young man who clearly needed help. Comedy has this unique power to connect people who feel isolated. Do you think that responsibility weighs on you? Jim nodded thoughtfully, his eyes bright with the intensity of someone who had wrestled with these questions in the darkest hours of night. Absolutely, Ellen. When someone tells me that something I did made them laugh during their darkest hour, that's both humbling and terrifying. Because suddenly you realize you're not just an entertainer anymore, you're accidentally becoming someone's lifeline, and you better take that responsibility seriously. As Jim spoke about responsibility and connection, Ellen watched Danny's reaction grow more intense. He was now clutching the notebook against his chest, like it contained something precious and fragile, his knuckles white from the grip. His body language screamed distress, the kind Ellen had learned to recognize after years of surprising audience members with life-changing gifts and seeing how people react when their carefully constructed facades begin to crumble. Jim, can I interrupt for just a moment? Ellen said, standing up from her chair with that decisive energy that had made her show legendary. The movement caused a ripple of confusion through the studio, as everyone tried to understand why their host was abandoning protocol. The cameras followed Ellen as she walked down the steps toward the audience, her instincts telling her that something important was about to happen. Something that would matter more than any scripted segment or promotional interview ever could. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Ellen asked gently, approaching the trembling young man with the kind of care she might show her own family member in crisis. "Danny," he whispered, clutching the notebook tighter against his chest. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disrupt anything. I was just trying to learn." Ellen's heart immediately went out to him. There was something in his voice, in the way he apologized for existing, that reminded her of every struggling person she'd ever tried to help. "You didn't disrupt anything," Ellen said, sitting in the empty chair beside him, abandoning her role as host entirely. "What are you writing in that notebook?" Danny's voice cracked as he tried to explain. "Jokes. I write jokes when I'm scared, when I don't want to, when I need a reason to keep going. My therapist says it's a coping mechanism, but it feels more like survival." The raw honesty hit the studio like lightning. Even Jim Carrey, who had built an entire career on manic energy and rubber-faced expressions, sat completely motionless in his chair, recognizing something profound in this young man's pain that transcended entertainment. "How long have you been feeling this way?" Ellen asked, her voice carrying all the warmth and compassion that had made her beloved by millions. 2 years, Danny whispered, his composure beginning to crumble like a dam that had been holding back an ocean of grief. "Since my dad died in a car accident, he was the only one who believed I could be a comedian. He used to work at the Laugh Track in Phoenix, cleaning up after shows, and he'd come home with stories about the performers. He'd sit with me in our kitchen and say I had a gift for finding light in dark places. He never got to see me perform even once. Now I write jokes for him every night, sitting at that same kitchen table, but they're not funny anymore. Nothing's funny when the person you're trying to make laugh can't hear you, when the only audience that ever mattered is gone." Danny's voice broke completely as he continued. "I keep thinking maybe if I get good enough, if I write something truly brilliant, somehow he'll know. Somehow he'll be proud. But most days I just feel like I'm talking to empty air, like I'm this pathetic kid still trying to impress a ghost." Ellen felt her heart break completely. This wasn't just grief. This wasn't just sadness. This was a young man drowning in the aftermath of losing his anchor, using humor as his only life preserver in an ocean of despair. "Danny," Jim called out from the stage, his voice uncharacteristically gentle, stripped of all performance and artifice. Can I see that notebook?" Danny looked up, surprised and slightly starstruck that his comedy hero was addressing him directly. With shaking hands, he passed the worn leather journal to Ellen, who carried it carefully to Jim, as if transporting something sacred. Jim opened the notebook with the reverence of someone handling a religious text, his eyes scanning pages of handwritten jokes, inspirational quotes, and what looked like letters addressed to Danny's deceased father. His expression changed completely as he read, transforming from curiosity to deep recognition to something approaching awe. "Danny," Jim said, his voice thick with emotion that he made no attempt to hide. "These aren't just jokes. This is beautiful writing. This is healing disguised as humor. This is art born from the deepest kind of pain." The studio was completely silent as Jim continued reading, finding gems scattered throughout the pages like stars in a dark sky. "Listen to this," he said, finding a specific entry. "What do you call a ghost who tells dad jokes? A punderful spirit who never really left?" Jim looked up, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Danny, that's not just funny. That's profound. That's poetry." Danny stared in absolute disbelief. His comedy idol, the man whose movies had gotten him through the worst nights of his life, had just validated his pain-turned art in front of 400 people and a television audience of millions. Ellen returned to Danny's side, recognizing that they were witnessing something that would change this young man's life forever. "Sweetheart, comedy isn't about being funny all the time. Real comedy, the kind that matters, is about finding light in darkness and helping others do the same. That's exactly what you're doing." "But I'm not helping anyone," Danny sobbed, all pretense finally abandoned. "I write these jokes and I still want to disappear. I still wake up every morning wishing I hadn't." That's when Jim Carrey did something that would be talked about for years. He stood up from his guest chair, walked down into the audience, and knelt beside Danny's seat, putting the multi-millionaire movie star on the same physical level as the grieving young comedian. "Danny," Jim said quietly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear, his voice carrying the weight of lived experience. "I attempted suicide twice in my 20s. The first time I was 23, broke, sleeping in my car, and convinced that my dreams were delusions. The second time I was 27, I had just gotten my first real break in comedy, and I felt more empty than ever. Both times I thought I was worthless, that my pain was permanent, and my contribution to the world was pointless. Both times, I believed that the darkness would never lift. I was wrong on all 3 counts. But more than that, I was missing something crucial." Jim paused, his eyes never leaving Danny's face. "I was missing the understanding that pain isn't the opposite of purpose, it's often the pathway to it. Your father saw something in you, not despite your sensitivity, but because of it. The same heart that breaks easily is the same heart that can mend others. That's not a weakness, Danny. That's a superpower." The studio had never been more silent. Even the camera operators had stopped their usual subtle movements, understanding they were documenting something that transcended television. "Your notebook," Jim continued, his voice steady and sure, "isn't just jokes. It's letters to your father, conversations with grief, and bridges to healing. That's not worthless. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Ellen watched this extraordinary moment unfold, recognizing that sometimes television transcends entertainment and becomes something sacred, something that can actually save lives. "Jim's absolutely right," she said, her own voice thick with emotion. "Danny, your father believed in you because he saw what we're seeing right now. Someone who can take the worst pain imaginable and transform it into something that could help other people heal." Danny looked between Ellen and Jim, 2 people who had dedicated their lives to making others feel better, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt truly understood. "I miss him so much," Danny whispered. the words carrying all the weight of his grief. "I know you do," Jim said, placing a gentle hand on Danny's shoulder. "But he's not really gone if his belief in you lives on. Every joke you write, every morning you choose to keep going, every time you decide to fight for one more day, that's him cheering you on from wherever he is now." Ellen reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out her personal business card, the one she reserved for the most important moments. "Danny, this has my personal phone number on it. Not my assistant's, not my manager's, mine. When the jokes stop working, when the darkness feels too heavy, when you need someone to remind you that you matter, you call me. That's a promise." But Jim wasn't finished. He took off his expensive watch, a beautiful piece that caught the studio lights, and drew gasps from the audience who understood they were witnessing something unprecedented. "This belonged to my father," he said, placing it carefully in Danny's trembling hands. "He gave it to me when I was your age, struggling and thinking about giving up on everything. He told me that time is the most precious gift we have, and we're meant to use it to heal ourselves and help heal others. I want you to have it now." Danny stared at the watch, completely overwhelmed by the generosity of two strangers who saw value in his pain when he couldn't see value in himself. "There's something else I need to say," Ellen announced, her voice steady but thick with emotion as she turned to face the camera and address not just her studio audience, but the millions watching at home. "Danny, you're not going through this alone, and neither is anyone else who's watching, right now feeling the same way. If you're out there thinking that your pain has no purpose, that your struggles don't matter, that the world would be better off without you, I need you to know something. You're wrong. Your pain has purpose. Your story matters. Your next joke, your next day, your next breath matters more than you could possibly know." She paused, looking directly into the camera with the intensity that had made her one of television's most trusted voices. "There's someone watching right now who needs exactly what you have to offer. Someone who needs your specific brand of humor, your particular way of seeing the world, your unique ability to find light in darkness. Don't rob them of that gift. Don't rob yourself of the chance to discover that your biggest wounds can become your greatest strengths." The audience erupted in applause, not the polite television kind, but the deep, soul-stirring recognition of witnessing something real and transformative in a world that often feels manufactured and hollow. People were on their feet, tears streaming down faces, hands pressed to hearts, understanding they had just witnessed something that would stay with them forever. Ellen wiped her own eyes, then looked back at Danny, who was now wearing Jim's father's watch and clutching her business card like lifelines. "This is why we do what we do," she said softly, though the microphones caught every word. "Not for the laughs, not for the ratings, but for moments like this, when we remember that we're all just humans trying to help each other make it through." 6 months later, Danny Martinez performed his first stand-up set at the Comedy Store in West Hollywood. His opening joke brought down the house. "My therapist says I have abandonment issues. I told her that's ridiculous. My abandonment issues have me." The audience roared, but Danny's eyes found the empty chair in the front row where he'd placed a framed photo of his father, and Jim Carrey's watch on his wrist reminded him that some gifts transcend time and space. Ellen was in the audience that night, and when Danny spotted her during his set, he paused and mouthed, "Thank you." She mouthed back, "You did this." Because sometimes the most important comedy isn't about getting laughs. It's about giving someone a reason to keep trying for them, and proving that even in our darkest moments we're never truly alone.